Hey guys, this is Aman. Welcome again to Habit Flutter. This is my second video of my Getting Started Flutter series. In previous video, we talked about the Flutter framework and how the layers of those framework works. In today's video, we'll be talking about the stateful and stateless widgets, which are the main building blocks of Flutter project. So basically, we will be starting with the default Flutter project, which Flutter gives us when we start a new project. And we'll go deep and understand what these widgets do deep inside and what is a state object, how do we manage state, and how is a stateful widget different from a stateless widget. Before doing all that, I would suggest you to install Flutter using flutter.dev. If already installed, you can move ahead with the video. If not, please do install it first, as well as Android Studio with it, and a basic setup with an Android phone or a simulator or emulator is preferred. So I will also, put the links through which you can follow these steps to, install Flutter as well as install the simulators on Android SDKs as well. If you are on Mac, you also need to install Xcode. I will also put the links of those also in case you need it. And if you are stuck anywhere, you can just, go to the comment and let me know. Without wasting any other time, we'll just start with that. So we'll create a new Flutter project. What we're gonna understand today is when we create a new Flutter project, Flutter gives us basics code which we can run through and see through the application. We'll understand how that code is working through and how it is managing it from the inside and how it actually helps us, to give us the updated state so quickly, how hot load, hot restart works, as well as how stateless and stateful widgets differs. So after installing Android Studio, you can just go through this plugin section and you can just install Flutter plugin. So it will help you in, creating a Flutter project more easily. You can also create a Flutter project using command line, using Flutter create. You can just, go this Flutter create and this blah, blah, blah. And it will create the Flutter project for you in whatever directory you want to. So you have this option or you have this option where you can just, go to new Flutter project. This is your SDK location. And when you go, you can just test hybrid app Flutter. So these are the platforms Flutter, supports. And you can also choose your favorite language to use with Android and as well iOS if you need to configure some things there. So I'll create the project. Okay, project creator. Now, first, before going through any code, we'll just run the application and see through what is happening when we run it. So as you can see, like we have this material app and we have these classes. Basically, it's a code to just increment the counter and that show that particular counter on the application. What we'll do is we'll just run the app. So it will run it in debug mode. And since it is running it on iOS, so it will run Xcode workspace. That means it will take the help of Xcode. But if we would run it on Android, it would take help of the Gradle system of Android, Gradle Assemble Debug. So basically, if you don't know what Gradle is something which is a part of Android system. Like whenever you do some changes, it builds. It's a part of the Android OS. Whereas Xcode has its own workspace, which updates whenever we do some changes on the code. So at the end, it runs it on operating system, but we have a layer of instruction here. See, this is for the Xcode build. Xcode build has been done, and the application has been actually run here. So this is our demo homepage, which Flutter gives us. So basically, when we click on this counter button, the UI updates to give us a new value, and it increases that value by one. Okay. So what we will do here is we will understand how we can we are basically achieving it from the inside out, right? Not just basic code. But we'll start with the basic code first. So here what is happening, we have this void main. This is the main entry point of our Flutter application. From here, you can, just go through and run the application. This is the void main. So in normal programs, what we do is we just, write this void main, okay, and we just go through to printf or print hello or something like that, right? If I comment it, this is the void main. So this is the basic approach which we used to do in a normal program. What will happen if I hot restart it? Hello. So basically, it's not updating or running anything here. It's just, it will just print this particular thing to hello, right? It is not attaching it everywhere. Now, what is happening here is this is normal. Now, how Flutter is achieving is Flutter has its void main function, but here it has its run app. So basically, what run app is, if we hover down to it, it says that it will inflate the given widget and attach it to the screen. So basically, what it is doing is it is attaching that particular widget to the screen so that it is visible to us, so that it is visible in the device. Okay, so if we go through this run app, we have all these widgets. So here, what is happening is it's providing a binding through the operating system. This run app is basically what it is doing is like it has operating system specific windows corresponding to the emulator size or the physical device size, and it is attaching and fitting that particular application here to that run app. Okay. To understand how it is doing is like we can also one thing see is like uh, if you wish to align your widget to one side of the screen, example given at the top, consider using the align widget. If you wish to center your widget, you can also use the center widget. Why it is saying us like that is because we can wrap this widget to another thing, like we can just use a center widget here. Now what will happen here is, let us try the align widget. Nothing is happening, right? We had this align widget. Now we will stop the app. So we'll run it again and see what happens. Nothing happened. So basically, we wanted it to align it by center, but it did not happen, right? Now, what we will do is, so we are just playing around with the code to see how it is behaving, right? So I have this runner. Now what I'll do is just use the align. I'll use my app as a child. Now what it is saying, the expression has a type of void, so its value can't be used. That means this run app can only be placed inside the function widget. It cannot be placed inside a child widget or something like that. It's actually not a widget. That's what Flutter is trying to make us understand. Now what I will do is I will again do this to run app my app. I'll make this as constant. Constant means like it states will not change. So we are just specifying it to Flutter so that it does not, you know, the performance is good there. So we have this run app. Okay. The widget is given constraints during layout that force it to fill the entire screen. Okay. Now calling run app again will detach the previous root widget from the screen and attach the given widget in its place. The new widget tree is compared against the previous widget. तो ये इसके बारे में we'll talk about this. Now, so here, what observation did we make here is how I'm going through is a natural way of coding through so that we can understand what wrong we are doing, what is allowed, what is not allowed. So here, what we understood by this observation is this run app is basically depends on it's actually a void function which takes a widget, it attaches to a widget. So basically, we cannot you know just directly use it inside the widget hierarchy. We have this runaway which takes a widget, right? When we see this, we go through this class. We have these libraries. Okay. So what we are doing is we are using all those operating system specific heights and widths and whatever we want, navigation methods and everything else is mentioned here. It's all junky. Like we are not able to understand the code through what it's called. So this is initialized the first time run app is called. It's getting some root element and doing something, right? We're not able to understand it as of now. What we are able to understand is like it's basically attaching the widget to that particular function so that we are able to see that widget in the simulator in a physical device, and it forces it to take all the space unless and until there is a notch or something like that, or this navigations above. Otherwise, we'll take the full space. Understood? Now here is our my app, and this my app is actually a stateless widget. Okay, this is a stateless widget. Now, what is a stateless widget? When we go and hover to it, we see that a widget that does not require mutable state. Now we think about like what is the mutable state now. So mutable state is something which cannot be changed on. Sorry, a mutable state is something which you can change throughout the application. Like for example, if I'm clicking on this button and it's changing the counter to 1, 2, 3, 4, that means it's rebuilding the UI. That particular UI, it's rebuilding and showing it to us. Right? So, what's the main difference between stateless and stateful is like it's stateless. If you click on this, then this will increment. But to show it increment, like store the updated value, the state should be mutable. But in stateless widget, state is not mutable. That is, state will not change. Only the value will be changed. For example, uh, let me tell you the example. I'll just use the terminal to show you the example. For example, we have this variable hello equals 0. Okay. Now we updated this variable like hello plus plus. We incremented it by 1. Now this value has been incremented, but we need to reflect it on the UI. Okay. To reflect it on the UI, we need to have a mutable state, the state which can change. But in case of stateless widget, state does not change. That means although the value will be changed, but it will not reflect in the UI. Means the UI will not be updated, right? So this is actually a stateless widget. So here we have used this class myapp as a stateless widget, where we have this material app, this theme data. Okay. and we have just specified the color scheme and whatever configuration we want to use. Okay, so this is used been for this is the root application, and for all those themes and everything else, we have used stateless widget here. We can also directly call this my homepage also, but in that way we also want to use this material app, right? So that is why we have created the stateless widget. ठीक है. So यहाँ पे now we have the stateful widget now in the home direction. So this we also have this home direction and also the routes direction, wherein like we are just giving the navigation patterns on like uh, on what part what which widget or class should open, or the screen should open. The home means like by default what will open. So by default this my homepage is being opened and it is a stateful widget. Now we will understand what is a stateful widget. So stateful widget is something which has its own state, and that state is mutable. That means that state can change. Basically, this is a perfect example of this button, wherein we are just clicking this button and it's incrementing by one, correct? So what's happening here is, although it is incrementing also, we are also reflecting it on the UI part. Now, how it is happening, we'll go through it. Here is our stateful widget. Okay, when we hover through it, it says that the widget that has a mutable state and state is information that can be read synchronously when the widget is built. That means it does not wait for something else. It synchronously updates the widget. It might change during the lifetime of the widget. It is the responsibility of the widget implementer to ensure that the state is promptly notified when such state changes. Basically, we by default they have observers which see through if a state has particularly changed or not. So we use a set state to just notify the widget that the particular state has been changed. We'll go through it also. Now here we have the stateful widget. Okay, but what happens is by default all the widgets are stateless widgets only. To give them a state, we just need to uh, create a state for them. To creating a state, Flutter has given us the by default stateful widget, which has some methods which we can override and use. For example, this create state is the most required method which we would use to create a stateless widget. So sorry, to uh, get like to give the state to a particular stateless widget. That means what is happening here is we are creating a state like create state. What will this do is it will create a mutable state for this widget at a given location in the tree. So this my homepage state, this actually extends this my homepage state, that is this one. Okay, what we are doing is basically we are creating a state of this, creating a state of my homepage state. Why? Because by default all the widgets are stateless. We need to create a state and give them a particular state. So that is why we are using this function. This is required. That is why we have two steps here. You might be wondering why there are two steps, right? First, we are creating this class, and then again we are creating this my homepage state. Then we are putting all the functions. So whatever the main logic and UI will be there, will be here in this class. We cannot put it here because stateful widget just provides us some small functions. Majorly this create state function, which is just helping us in just giving a state to a particular stateless widget, right? So now we got the state, okay? We are extending the state so we can use all those elements, the stateful widget elements. So I'll got to state also, but now we have come state to the stateful widget. We will also see through the life cycle of stateful widget, right? So life cycle stateful widget, what is it actually? It is like uh, it goes through stages. For example, when we open a new screen, it first goes through init state. Init state is basically responsible for initializing things or calling the functions or something else, or initializing variables, controllers, animation controllers, and everything else at the first instance before even the UI is built on the screen. Like if I'm clicking on this particular page and another page is opening like this, so before even this UI is built, what it will do is it will call this the all those functionalities which are mentioned inside the init state function. So here is our init state function. So they have not used it basically here because it was not required, but we can use it. How will we use it? We will override it and we will use init state. So here, whatever function we write, functions will run at an instance. Like जैसे ही वो नया screen open होगा, the moment the new screen opens, it will run that particular functionalities or something. Controller is like that. So this is the first phase. Okay. Second phase will be date update dependencies, and there are many other phases also. Date update dependencies, which will basically check if that dependency is update or not. Another thing is mounted. So those other factors are like not required as of now. So we'll not talk about it. Now after int state, we have this build method. Now what this build method will basically do is it see here it's already written. It will be called after calling init state. Okay, and after calling did update widget. After receiving a call to set state, after a dependency of the state object changes, okay, and after calling deactivate and then reinserting the state object. So they like how init state method is there, deactivate method is also there, dispose method is also there. Dispose is used to basically dispose of the controllers and variables which are no longer in use in that particular frame, in that particular UI. So we'll go through them later, but first see how this build function works is basically it's the main part of our application wherein it helps us in painting the layout and everything and rendering the UI by whatever code we have written, whatever widgets we have given to them. And here in widget build, we will have a build context, which is actually a handle to the location of the widget in the widget tree, which is basically key where that widget is basically in the widget tree. Since I already told you, Flutter follows aggressive composition. That means it follows a tree-like structure, right? So how a tree-like structure is basically is let me show you. Like you have this. You'll have this parent widget, and then you will have those child widgets. Okay. Then again, nested child widgets like that. So, like as you see, if we go on and on, it will go aggressively inside, right? So we need to keep track of all these widgets. To keep track of all these widgets, we need to also know the location of that widget in the particular tree. Okay, and also its uh, the location as well as it will contain all those methods which we can use from the stateless widget build methods. And what are those methods? Basically, like what will be the screen height, what are the color schemes and property which we are using, which will be passed through the inherited widget. So we'll talk about inherited widget later on in another video because it's a separate topic. But in short, what inherited widget is like, it will have all those properties which can pass through from root to children, and like it's basically easy to access all those properties from any child widget even if it's coming from the parent widget. So to tell you like why I did tell you is like basically I'm trying to explain you what this context build context is and what this build method is. So you need to understand this very properly, the build method as well as build context, as it is very important. If you understand it, how it works, how it behaves, what are its properties, then it will be very easy for you to progress ahead in the Flutter app development path, and you will be easily able to build applications and walk through applications. So this is the context which describes the part of the user interface represented by this widget. The framework calls this method in a number of different situations. Like after calling init state, like the same thing. It is a part type. The build context is basically a type of this context. Now, when it will be called, we already see. So after calling init state, by default it calls now. We have this scaffold widget which will have all those properties and all. We'll go through that later. You can go through, and we'll have all these properties, app bar and center. These are all widgets basically which we are using. Now here we have this floating action button, and now we have this increment button. So when we click on this increment counter, we call this set state method. Now what is this? It will notify the framework that the internal state of this object has basically changed. So we are basically notifying the framework. We are telling the framework that the state has been changed. So please update the state, right? So there are two methods to notify the framework. First method is through normal set state. And the second method, which you would be using in the later stages when building Flutter projects, will be the listeners, which will, what it will do is basically it will be doing the same work only, but the listeners will automatically listen for changes and automatically notify the framework. Here, what we are doing, we are manually notifying the framework on a function pressed. But there might be some scenarios wherein the values might be changed. For example, if value changes from 0 to 1, okay, or for example, the value uh, sensitively or gradually changes, right? Then in that case, we can just put a listener which will, listen through changes and see through and automatically notify the listener or automatically change the state. So we'll go through that later. But first of all, we need to understand the set state is basically it tells the Flutter framework that something has changed in the state, which causes it to return the build method below so that the display can reflect the updated values. So if we change counter without calling set state, then the build method would not be called again, and so nothing would appear to happen. So basically, what we will do is just let's remove this set state and see through what happens. We'll hard restart. Now we will increment. You can see what's happening, right? So although the value is being changing, sorry, let me uncomment this counter and also show you that value is basically changing. For that, I will just print the counter. Okay, okay. Now I'm incrementing it. Nothing is happening on the UI side, but here you can see the values has been changing. Now, if I hot reload it, then it will show me the updated value. So can you see the pattern? So basically, hot reload is basically a set state, something like that, which is, telling the framework that something has been changed. It's not basically telling it. So the framework is finding it out. How? So there are two things, right? First of all, we are notifying the framework that something has changed. And in another process, which is not being handled by us, the framework in itself is deciding that something has changed. So how is it deciding? Simple. It's checking through the previous instance and the new instance. It's checking through if there is any changes in the previous instance and the next instance which we have. Like for example, it did compare the counter values, what initially it was and what now it is. So basically, it compared that instance and saw that the state has been changed. Previously, it was 0, now it is 7. So it updated it. So basically, we'll go through this. How set state is working here is this set state is notifying that the state has changed and it is causing the build method to again run, again build. This build method is being called again to build this particular UI again because something has been changed. Now, basically what it is doing, this build method is telling the framework that this state has been changed. So why we have run app here is now what this run app is doing is now it's doing the comparison there and it already knows that the state has been changed. We have already notified it, right? But still it will not update the changes if it does not find if the state has been changed. That means, for example, we have this counter as 0, right? And we just set the counter to 0. Okay. Now we hot restart it. Now, no matter what we click on, the value will be 0 only. Okay. Now, in this case, you might be wondering, since we are calling this set state, it's recalling the build method again. No, but that's not happening. Why? Because Flutter is optimizing this shit on its own and on the inside. So what it's doing is it's checking if the instance has in fact particularly changed or not, right? If it has changed, then only it will run the build method. Otherwise, it will not. For example, again, if I pass it to counter plus plus, that means it actually knows that the counter values has been changed. Then it will call the set state method, right? So this is how Flutter is maintaining the state and all. And why you need to understand is basically when you go through and walk through the applications, you will know when to use stateless and when to use stateful widgets, how immutable states work, and basically how is hot reload working. Basically, it's checking for the instances. Basically, it's checking if that instance has particularly been built or not, right? So when we are hot restarting it, it's basically running the application from fresh. That means it's running the run app again and the void main again, everything else. But when we are calling hot reload, what it is doing is it's checking for the instances, the build, is there any difference? Something has been updated or not? I will show you how. So what I will do is I will just remove this counter and then hot reload. So it said reloaded one of 689 libraries in 166 milliseconds. That reloaded one means there was something, some change which we did. Now what I will do is I will just again hot reload it without doing any changes. Now it's reloaded 0 libraries. That means no change has been detected by the framework itself. So it would not call the build method again. It would not change the UI again. Although you try doing it the hot reload and you try doing hot reload, but it will not work because there are no changes which you have done, right? Now again, if I just switch it to counter plus plus and then hot reload, sorry, I needed to do hot restart basically. Let me just uncomment it again and hot reload the auxiliated one of 689 libraries. So, by two methods, it's making sure. So even if you call the set state, it will just check if that particular instance have been changed or not or something like that. But set state has its disadvantage also, like which we'll go through in next episode maybe or in another video. Let me know if you properly got through or understood how stateless and stateful widgets are, what are its importance, what is hot reload and hot restart. And let me know if you have any doubts regarding the starting project of Flutter, stateful and stateless widgets. Also, do let me know the feedback. How was it? Did you understand it properly? What can be improved? I'll be very much glad on the improvement part on this. And so, thank you very much for watching. Stay tuned for more videos. Please do subscribe the channel. This is Hybrid Flutter with Aman Khan Puani. Have a great day.